From humble beginnings to leading the profession, he's got pay running through his blood. This is Behind the Button. Hello and welcome to Behind the Button, the podcast that really lifts the lid on what goes on behind the scenes in the world of pay. I'm Laura Murphy, the CIPP's content editor, and I'm joined today by the big boss. Welcome to the show, Jason Davenport. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Laura. It's great to be here. Wonderful to be part of this episode.
So on Behind the Button, we ask our guests to leave a parting question for the next guest.
Okay.
And your one is, what's the biggest payroll mistake you've ever made? But more importantly, what did you learn from that?
Okay. This would be a broader answer to that context. So rather than an individual mistake, this was a business mistake that I've been around when outsourcing began and back office functions like payroll were taken over by broader businesses to allow businesses that wanted to outsource that to focus on their core business. And in doing that, one of the biggest mistakes when building a team was to turn around and tell the business that you're outsourcing the business from that you're going to do the payroll so much better, so much more efficiently. You actually set up a lot of hairs running them when you're doing that, because people go, hang on, I've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years. You've just walked through the door and you're going to tell us you're going to do that so much better. So the learn there was really take time to listen to the client that you're dealing with, to understand the complexities of the industry that they work in, because payroll spans all industries, all employment types. And once you've done that, then with a degree of confidence, show them the journey you're going to take them on, but don't make grandiose statements right at the top.
Yeah. So I have heard you referred to, Jason, as the king of payroll. So how does that title make you feel?
Well, I think the king of payroll was a very flattering title provided to me because of the position I hold. And it was somebody that said that outside of the industry that we work with quite closely. But hey, regardless of title, I think the opportunity that I have right now to drive the awareness, the understanding, the impact and the recognition for all pay professionals is something that I hold very dearly. And I want to make as much of an impact as I can whilst I'm in this position, because I do understand the Institute is 40 years young. We have many more years to go. And so I'll be holding the baton for the next chief exec and want to pass on to that individual something that they're super proud to take forward as well.
Yeah. So obviously the king of payroll started somewhere. So could you talk to me about your first ever job? And that doesn't need to be your first payroll job, just your first sort of foray into the world of work.
Well, if I go slightly before work, but in order to earn some money, I come from a working class family. We didn't have a lot of cash to splash. And so right from the age of 14, I had a paper round. I then started at the weekends to do car valeting and earn money that way. And I've encouraged each of my children to be independent as well, because I think having a strong work ethic, having a good understanding of your outputs will deliver if you're prepared to put in that energy and that effort, is a great strong base to start from. And, paper rounds are tough in all weathers, getting up before school to do that. Car valeting and delivering to a neighbour that was prepared to then part with money to say, yeah, that was a job well done. All that is good grounding. But I'm really pleased to be able to say that my first job was with a construction firm. I came into the office and they showed me accounts and they showed me payroll. And it was a weekly payroll for the construction teams. And that just so energized me. I've just never left that. That really dropped the desire to deliver. You could see the results of delivering well, of calculating correctly, and actually what that pay packet meant every week to all of those construction workers and their families. That really gave me such a buzz to be part and parcel of. I've never lost that buzz, and how important payroll is to the community it serves.
Yeah. And, that is a big topic on this podcast, how important the pay professions are.
Yes.
So I'm glad you touched upon that. Do you remember your first pay slip? And do you remember how much it was for?
My first, top line was a whole £30.
Wow.
Yeah. So extrapolate that, and it was 120 something pounds. Yes. And at the time, it was cash. Because I came out from that community. I really am part of the STEAM age, but I've moved through technology to the banking position and the computerized position. But I do remember receiving that first payslip and being ever so pleased to be able to give my mum £10 of it as part of weekly maintenance for her.
Yeah. So from those very early days of picking up £30 in your payslip, you've obviously held many, many roles, each very demanding, each requiring international travel. But you also have a family back at home, Jason. So how did you manage sort of those more demanding roles with a growing family back at home?
I think right from the off, Louise and I sat down, discussed the impact of career, the impact of growing a family, and coming from Liverpool, there was less opportunity there for me to grow in my career. And so it was always understood whether it was going to be nationally or internationally, and it started nationally and taking up more senior roles, that I would need to be out of the house at a regular cadence, whether that was very early in the morning, whether that was for days or weeks at a time. And we agreed that was our commitment to each other. That sounds very traditional, I know, but that's how we've grown up. And then when it came to starting a family, we moved to be close to Louise's parents for additional support, knowing that I would be away quite a lot and wouldn't be able to offer that day-to-day support. So there's sacrifices that you make, because latterly in life, I was able to support school runs and things like that. But in those former years, I didn't get that opportunity. But they're part of the sacrifices that help for the family to grow and develop anyway. The interesting pieces about international travel is I really love and enjoy meeting people, different cultures, experiencing their view of the world. And so I've worked across in India, across in the Philippines, establishing shared services, an awful lot of regions within America, across Europe. But in each of the occasions when I was working internationally, I'd sit down with Louise and then more with the family and talk about where it was going to be, talk about the experiences that I was likely to gain from that. So we had a world map some years ago in the office in the house, and with pins on it where I'd been. And I'd bring back treasures from those different visits, so that the children have got them on the windowsills and things like that. And what it enabled me also to inspire the children to do is take advantage of any travel and look to enjoy the community that you then join, embrace that opportunity of learning as part of it. And so they've always been committed. They've always been supportive. I actually was in Belgium when Charlotte was born and didn't get back for her birth, but did get back on the same day. Now she's 21 next year. And one of the things that she wants to do as part of her 21st birthday celebration is visit Belgium with me.
Nice.
So she'd like to see where I was. I was in the Philippines when Gabrielle had her Holy Communion, and I was passed around on video to talk to all the family that were present, etc. And somehow I managed to find myself in Athens twice for two of Patrick's birthdays. So each of the children have realised Dad has made some commitments, but they know they're the absolute centre of the world for me. And so I make all my commitments back to them as well. And thankfully, I'm really enjoying them now as young adults, and they involve me in in as much of their lives and their celebrations as we do in ours. So it's a wonderful thing to see them grow and develop. And while sacrifices are made, life is part and parcel of that. We don't stay in a safe little haven all the time. Actually going out and embracing the world is an important part of learning, yeah.
Yeah. And I know you're really, really close with the children now. We were talking earlier about, you've got a bar in the house, and maybe there was a reason for you doing that, in that you want to keep them close as possible.
Yeah, I read on, or I viewed on Instagram some message that said by the time your children are 18, you spent the majority of your time with them. And I went, I am breaking that cycle. That doesn't exist for us.
Yeah.
So a number of years ago, before I took up this position, I bought a boat out in the Mediterranean, and that has encouraged the children to continue to come on holiday with us. And actually, they bring their friends with them as well. And then, as you mentioned, in Easter, I had a pub built in the garden to encourage family time. And we have a guitar, and we have tambourines, and we can stream music, and we have a right good knees up.
I think we need to have our next team building day at
Yeah.
yours, Jason.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
So before we sort of come over to your time at the CIPP, I just want to ask you, is there anything you'd like to share that maybe I or the audience wouldn't know about you?
Well, I've been asked that topic on a number of occasions, and people therefore know I once was security detail for Princess Diana as a headline, which is quite a significant headline. But actually, the predominance of my family around me, my brother, my sister, my wife, work in the NHS. My brother's a surgeon, an orthopaedic surgeon. He's based at Wrightington Hospital, and that's been incredibly useful to me. His wife's a GP as well. And being a rugby coach and having come across quite a number of accidents, having a GP and a surgeon on standby to be able to call in for advice is incredibly useful, especially when you're just trying to calm down both an injured player and perhaps the parents from the sideline as well.
Yeah. And I bet they call on you equally for any sort of payroll advice.
What's really nice to be able to do is, from a broader business perspective, also help with nephews in terms of what they want to do. And I mentioned nephews because I've got nephews, I haven't got any nieces.
Yeah.
My brother and his sister both had families of boys, and helping them with their direction, considered career opportunities. I've really enjoyed being able to support them in their overall decision making. And yes, of course, one thing that's happened with my own daughters and will happen with my son is they are so used to receiving everything electronically. They've never received an employment contract in paper. Everything's, on an app. And the same with pay slips. And so they do frequently come to me quite annoyed about tax that they have to pay. And then I explain the rationale behind that and how it's all structured. And they go away understanding, maybe not happy, but understanding.
I was going to say, I don't think anyone's ever happy about having to pay tax, but at least if they understand why, that softens the blow a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that why is really important. I think that why is part of community. We tend to look at tax as a bad word, but actually what everybody contributes, the working population and the paid professionals that support the working population collect on behalf of central government £478 billion this fiscal year, the last recorded fiscal year. And that's incredibly important for decision makings within this country. So regardless of the politics, actually living in a country with such an opportunity to develop further all of the infrastructure, all of the services that are enabled, everybody should be proud of the contribution that they make in order to enable that. We whilst there are challenges that we always face, we can be proud that we've developed a leading light in terms of where the world sits and our whole approach and support to our broader communities.
Yeah. And we're going to come on to talk more about the government a little bit later on, and sort of the role that the Institute plays there. But now I really want to look at your time as CEO of the CIPP. So you've been here now for 2.5 years, which has flown by.
Yes.
And in that period, we've seen, growth everywhere. We've seen lots of things changing. So talk me through sort of how you've seen that over the past 2.5 years.
So with each of the roles I've ever taken on, I come in with ambition.
Yeah.
And my ambition having this opportunity is really to put pay and all that it means, not just in the facets of it, operational, structural, but the impact it has to families. The impact that correct pay is so important, and it has to finances and well-being. And so I saw myself here within the Institute, supporting the membership, wanting to ensure that the membership understand just how valued they are and providing value back to them from what we offer, to ensure that our qualifications and our training are as relevant as they can be today for business. And that encompasses not just in-house payroll professionals and legislation, but the more structural things around that with project management, with more leadership, with AI and robotics. And that impacts all of the payroll communities with the likes of the payroll bureau providers, because the level and the changes within the qualifications that I've seen during my time here, I think is really impressive. And we're having acknowledgement from business that we're delivering in the right way for them, for what's necessary for the leaders of the future. And it's really important that we support, acknowledge, grow and develop that message as well, because the payroll practitioners sit at all levels within business. Yeah. And so whilst often lots of people talk about strategy, actually the day-to-day practitioner, the person that's delivering, is super important to that organization, is super important to the community they're serving, the employee base. And we want them to be as good as they can be. We want their training to be fresh, to be relevant. They want their understanding of compliance to really be so important that they understand where they are. So I'm just incredibly enthused by everything that we can do as an institute and really push that message further forward.
Yeah. And that nicely brings me to our sort of new strategic direction. So I noticed within that answer, you spoke about the pay communities.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't say just the payroll profession, you've broadened that a little bit.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
So I want everybody that's involved within the pay communities to have an awareness of what that means for them, because we are here to serve not just operational staff, not just those in leadership positions, but those that are developing software, those that are writing context and delivering tutorials, and those that are really pressing the message much more further afield, but everything that is connected to pay. CIPP is a good home for them, where they will get regular updates around legislation and broader than that, but also to feel part of the reason for communities, to feel part of that community, to be kept up to date. I truly believe the editorials that you produce and we present out to membership are just fantastic. They're of super high quality. And that's super important as well. Yeah, we want to maintain that and continue to build on that. And the more and more people that realize actually they are involved in the pay communities, it might be pensions that they're doing, it might be reward that they're handling, but actually it's all part of an individual's pay packet and an individual's financial well-being. And it has such an importance and relevance to business as one of the largest overheads. So looking at what that means for them, for me, embracing everything that pay touches is a super important part of that.
Yeah. And I think, there is more of a recognition now that payroll isn't just a processing job. There are lots of different career routes you can go down. As you said, sort of areas that might not necessarily spring to mind when you first think of payroll, like software development and things like that. I think we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
So in terms of the strategic direction, we have sort of 4 key main pillars underpinning that. And the first one I wanted to talk to you about today is collaborative impact, because I think that is so important. And, as the Institute, we have been working so much more closely with lots of different people, including government departments, which is something you referenced earlier.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that, Jason.
If I can build out on the strategic canvas actually that we developed first and foremost, because collaborative impact is one of those pillars. And first and foremost, it was about that internal change and direction. As we move through looking at all of the different areas of the business with qualifications, with training, with events, with marketing, ensuring that we collaborate, that we look at each other's objectives and work together to the benefit of those is an important internal step. And many of the objectives that we have go right across all the functions. So it's about everybody working together there. So first and foremost, it was to identify how I want the business to work, the institute as a whole. And then, as you mentioned, then externally with our sister organizations across the world, super important that we're connected with them, that we talk about things beyond legislation, because there's items such as AI, cybercrime, those kind of items touch all of us globally, not just in one unique country. And actually working so closely with government bodies is very, very important. We hold a trusted advisor status with them, and we respect that. We respect that allows us to be in the room and having those conversations. And actually, what I've seen from HMRC over the last couple of years with their stakeholder engagement conferences is a real desire to listen, a desire to understand what industry needs, a desire to help shape changes in policy that will support that, and how legislation is delivered to help support that. And that's why we've been able to announce Matt Ackrig going on a secondment to support the Payroll and Benefits initiative. We have many other different instances which we can talk about around that just builds on our collaborative approach and being respected. We also truly value and hold in high regard our respected status. And that is about leading the profession. And therefore, in leading the profession, we have to set high standards for ourselves in order to open those doors in government and deliver the messages we want to deliver for the whole profession.
Yeah. And I want to wind back a little bit to the internal collaboration.
Yes.
So I think we can all agree that National Payroll Week and the annual conference and exhibition for 2025 were our best yet, our biggest yet. I've seen so many comments about how MPW has raised the profile of payroll, which is 100% what we want. And, all the feedback from ACE was incredible. And that is as a result of internal collaboration. And I know that we had a suggestion about the first night at our conference being ACE Fest. So that just shows the power of that internal collaboration.
Yeah. I take all of the accolade. No, I don't. I think what's wonderful with the senior leadership team that I have around me, with the team of leaders that support all of the different functions, embracing empowerment, listening to everybody's voice. And I want to say here and now, it was Sam Parks in our marketing team who came up with the idea of a festival approach to the Wednesday evening. I wanted something that was much more of a networking type opportunity, not just sit down at a dinner and stay with the group that you were with. All I had was that headline. Sam came up with the idea, the team ran with it, and wow, it was so very well celebrated, really impactful. Everybody enjoyed it. And the, conference is about the experience of learning, but it's also about celebrating and supporting each other. And it absolutely delivered on all of that. So super proud of what Sam considered, and then everybody ran with and felt the freedom to run with in that way.
And I loved that you were bouncing up and down on the dance floor at ACE Fest along with Adrian.
Well, I won't refuse a dance.
So another one of our strategic pillars that's really important is all about amplifying expertise. Mm-hmm. So we often say that there are so many skills that go into being a pay professional that those outside of the industry don't necessarily see. So talk to me about why that pillar is so important and what the Institute is doing to shine a spotlight on all of those skills in the pay professions.
I think to that note, Laura, it's super important that the back office consideration that was pay is much more vibrant, much more vital than people realise now. And as you say, when you talk about the skills, you have the numeracy skills that come with individuals that are looking at payroll and delivering that. But actually, you've got lots of customer service skills. You've got lots of analysis skills and individuals that come in with an analytical mindset can really find a great place, because there's such a lot of data that is held within the payroll software. And actually understanding, analysing that, and then delivering that back for the business is super important as well. And so what we want to do with amplifying our voice is not just talking to industry and recognising to industry that compliance is so important, and therefore getting it right is so important, and understanding legislation and doing calculations correctly is important. But everything else that sits around that can de-risk you as a business owner by having well-trained, well-supported payroll professionals around you, and really shouting about just how important that is to the community they're then serving, because there's lots of data that's shared from the HR communities that talk about absence, that talk about impact of morale. If payroll is wrong, that's a massive impact to productivity. Yeah, that's time consumed. That's time taken up looking at other things that aren't core business. And so the importance of getting it right is very much underrepresented or thanked less than it should be, when getting it right each and every time allows the production of your team to just continue and to build, because their financial well-being is so important that if that is satisfied, then what they can deliver in the workspace is focused on the workspace and not on how am I going to pay the next bill, you know?
Yeah. And you mentioned within that being well trained. And whenever I hear the phrase every day is a school day, I do think of you, Jason, because I know you're very fond of that saying. And that, of course, brings me to lifelong learning, which is another of our strategic pillars. How have we at the Institute developed our portfolio of qualifications and training? Because that is a really exciting space at the moment.
It really is, yes. So let me talk to you about that first, and then I'll come back to every day's a school day and why that's important to me as a mantra. So the listening to business, listening to our membership, and listening and considering the future needs of generational changes in the workplace meant that we needed to look at qualifications, how they were being delivered. And so we've challenged the university partners that we work with about more flexible approach. We've developed our own qualifications that are very much led by business topics and needed for the leaders of the future. So I'm really happy with the content that's going into those qualifications. Our training, we continually look at those shorter courses that are made available, making sure that they're relevant, that they're up to date, and they're delivering back what is needed by the membership and the non-members who want to take up those opportunities. But equally, you're very pleased to see, listening to the membership and listening to their changing needs, there was a need for shorter courses, more refresher type courses that give you the overview to be confident in the topic. And maybe it's something you've not touched upon for a while. And that's where PQL, Payroll Quick Learners, come from. And those short bite-sized courses, whilst not all the detail that's necessary for real true context, absolutely given enough to give that good overview and an insight into the topic that's being studied, has been delivered and has gone down incredibly well. So we're super excited about that. So we have a portfolio that offers both long-term qualifications and the depth that's delivered through that, which obviously is all celebrated at graduation, a fantastic event every year. The shorter training courses, and then the real, the PQL, the Payroll Quick Learn, bite-sized type courses, which is a lot of what content, what people want to consume today in the way that they're consuming anytime, anywhere. I've just got 45 minutes spare. Let me have a look at this and go through it. That's we want to have something to offer for all of those different needs. But let me take you back to every day's a school day, because that isn't just about lifelong learning. That is about demonstrating to everybody an openness to keep your mind open. To don't say we've always done it this way, to don't say this is how this is done and it has to be this way, to embrace the opportunity of thinking differently, to embrace challenges. Yeah, so I absolutely enjoy working in that approach, talking with my senior leadership team about every day being a school day, so they know they can challenge me. I might come in with an idea, but we get to a much better place by talking around it, talking through it, giving those different opinions and views, because I've got blind spots like anybody else, and the team around me, we complement each other so well in order to drive to a better outcome. So I use the mantra to embrace that freedom of consideration and thinking, so that people can think that more openly in that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned there listening to the broader team, and earlier on listening to our members and the feedback that they give. So in which way do you communicate with our members? How do you ensure that we're giving them what they need?
So you'll know as content editor that I do a chief exec message for each of our editions, and my details are there and deliberately put there every time so that I can say, please get in touch with me. And people do both in industry today and people who've retired but are still receiving the magazine, etc. But also the events that we hold. I just love having the opportunity to talk with individuals there, understanding their background and taking feedback. Feedback is super important. Being open to listen to that, to be able to be challenged about how we're doing and what we're doing. But also when we're talking about that, it allows me to illustrate things that we're doing that maybe the membership don't know, or things that we're thinking about. And then I can tease out thoughts and ideas about how would this be received. And so there's so many more things that we've got to do. And part of building out the strategic canvas was saying, right, we don't have the ability to boil the ocean all at once with a finite resource and capability that's around us. We need to plan out through proper road mapping, not just 12 months, but for the next 5 years, what does that look like? What are the objectives we want to achieve? So some things that we're not looking at right now, they're on the canvas to be looked at in the future, and we know we'll get to them. But having that broader view was super important to be able to say, when are we going to get to that, so that something doesn't fall off the plate, if you like, something, it's not just 12 months, it's 5 years, and we can go, yeah, that either comes forward because it's more priority, or we will get to that, but we know that we're also doing things to build towards that as well.
Yeah. And I think with the members, they love the fact that their CEO is approachable and that they can come to you and talk to you and give you that feedback. Our final pillar is culture, governance and quality. What does that mean to you, Jason?
Before taking up this role, I'd spent a number of years on board. So I've been associated with the Institute for a number of years. And one of my reflections from external industry perspective was, wow, we deliver the highest quality. It looks like a team of hundreds of people are there doing that. And actually, it's quite a small, finite team. So the quality that is delivered is number one of importance to us, because that's value to the members. The empowerment and support to the team so that they all feel engaged and have the ability to raise their voice about whatever. The likes of Sam we mentioned a moment ago from marketing, and raising his perspective of what a festival could look like and driving that and taking that forward. I want everybody within the organization to feel empowered to have that voice, to recognize the contribution they're making, and for us to recognize that with them, but also to help them in their whole career journey. That whole career journey is wonderful if it's with us, but it's also wonderful if they go on and do fantastic things elsewhere. We want to embrace everybody in their career journey. Nothing is for life. We know careers now are not a one-stop shop for life, that people do change. But we want people to, those that may have left, to recognise just how important their time with us was and how we valued that for them. And equally, the contribution we've made to help them grow as well. But of course, I think from a culture perspective, it's also touching back on what you said earlier, Laurie. One of my first and foremost perspectives is family first. And we recognise that within the business. Everybody comes to work to be productive and to deliver, but everybody has a different story behind the scenes. I'm very open. Some people are less so, and that is absolutely fine. But I want everybody to know we're here to support them. And we understand we all go through different times of our life, different change in our life, but we can all empathize and support each other as we go through that. So that culture, governance and quality is as much about the people as it is about our outputs and what we deliver, so that we really have a strong sense of being. And I think that shows in the events that we deliver, and just how everybody sees the passion that everyone has when they come together like that.
Yeah, and it's funny you should mention that people seem to think there are hundreds of us working at the
Yes.
CIPP. I hear that all the time, and people are shocked when I tell them how small we are.
Yeah.
And I think, that is because everybody at the Institute is super passionate. And I think you get that passion because of that culture that you've created where people can give their ideas and they can juggle life and work, which is so important. So more generally, Jason, what would you say is the most rewarding part of your role as CEO at the CIPP?
This is an interesting thing because the name Jason means healer.
Okay.
And my brother, who's the surgeon, is James, and he's the leader. So we think we got our names switched. I've always enjoyed leading, from being the eldest and the big brother in the house, to lead in the family, to lead in teams internationally, to lead in the Institute. I love the ability to give back, to support individuals to be the best that they can be. And I just think this is such a fantastic opportunity for me. Not being as young as I'd like to be, this is probably my swan song. So I want to make the best impact I can. And yeah, I think we just have such a bright future together to deliver that.
Yeah. And then that leads me to, what is the most challenging part of your role, would you say?
That's a difficult question to answer because with every challenge comes learning. And I guess learning is always an opportunity for us to think about how we can do things differently to have a better impact. If I think about the broader communities that I work with, outside of the UK, for example, well, how do they get more close to those when we only go to events once a year? Well, I have regular monthly cadence with each of the chief execs elsewhere in the world, so that we independently, so that we can just discuss and narrate the different items we might be looking at. Yeah, I think being part and parcel of all of the challenges that we face and having those conversations and making sure that we're part of it, we're thinking through it. Very recently, we had the considerations around AML for anti-money laundering and supervision for the membership. In order to talk through those challenges, we were working with other institutes like Chartered Institute of Taxation, for example, about what it would mean for them, and just considering what that future may have looked like together. And how we might have molded and shaped that for the benefit of the membership. So those kind of challenges, it's important to have the conversation in the room, to have the right people in the room, and that might not just be our own people. It's collaborating with others elsewhere for their experience and where they may have already trod the path before. So I don't think I answered your question particularly well. It's just whatever challenges comes, it's facing it, it's dealing with it, and it's addressing it for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah, and that's a common theme in the pay industries. We do have to be reactive quite a lot of the time. We don't know what the government's going to plan next that could impact our roles in the pay profession. So it is reacting to those changes and making sure we handle them in the correct way. So you recently achieved CIPP Fellow membership, and you mentioned earlier about giving something back, which I know is part of becoming a fellow. So tell me about that experience and about the application process.
So I've been challenged for a while to fill in my application. The application process needed time to think through how I could properly articulate the different work that I was doing. It actually could have been quite a daunting process for those that were judging to turn around and say, no, you're not doing enough. So we'll put that to one side. But for anybody that's considering going through that step, and I would absolutely consider anybody that's been a member for a number of years, look at how you're giving back. I've continually supported and challenged my own team to write articles. Before I was part of the CIPP, that was something that I did as part of objective setting for individuals within operational teams, etc., because it challenges you to put down your thoughts. It asks you to share your experiences when you write an article. In doing that, in going to events, in challenging yourself to be a speaker on a particular topic, is an important way of giving back to the community around you. What have you learned from your experience? What gifts can you give back that so people don't have to make the same mistakes, but can learn from those that you've experienced? Those are real challenges for you to put into your fellowship application. What are you doing to give back to the broader industry? What have you done and can demonstrate that you've done in order to help develop others? And how are you promoting the industry is super important. So each of that went into the application. And obviously here and now I'm doing an awful lot, and so it's part and parcel of my job. But that doesn't mean to say that, as I say before, it was very much a part of, I want to be a speaker at events. I want to hold workshops and deliver those for the benefit of others. I want to create articles for learning that's more broader. So each of those as examples of giving back were part and parcel of that. And of course, I get the opportunity right now to speak about the UK, about our own legislation, about changes here all across the world, which is something I regard very highly and treat with the utmost respect. One of the things I didn't put in my application, but was an important side appendix, if you like, was an important thing to note. Receiving a letter from the King's household, the royal household, that thanked all at the CIPP and all within the pay profession for all the work that they do for the UK economy. Wow. That was a great accolade to receive on behalf of everybody, because it's everybody that makes that contribution. So that was, getting the King to acknowledge that was quite good. And who knows what I'd like to have in National Payroll Week in the future, especially as we get near our 50-year celebration, is a member of the working household to come along and say hi.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So anybody that's watching who's interested in membership, there are other membership levels as well.
Yes.
They can find out about it in the show notes.
Yes.
Within that as well, Jason, you were talking about representing the UK across the globe, which I know is very important to you. And we do a lot of work with our international counterparts. You go and visit their conferences, they come to ours. So what's the biggest single learning you've taken from conversations with those organisations or from their events that you've attended?
I would hope that if any of the others were sat here as well with me now, we would all contribute in the same way to say that we all learn from each other.
Yeah.
So whilst America is the largest, Canada has an incredible pay profession community, and South Africa is developing their pay professions, and in Australia they're doing similar, and other European countries, in Turkey for example, only just started. But each of us can learn something from each other, whether we're the largest, the smallest, wherever we fit within that. We're all evolving. We're all thinking about how we deliver back in the events that we do. And as I mentioned before, that there are topics that don't just sit within legislation within the country. There are topics that are much more broader than that we're able to enable and discuss further on behalf of each of our memberships. So the events themselves are one opportunity, but actually the broader collaboration around those events and how we then offer those different services, signpost or build together different opportunities is great. And I'm really pleased to say that that doesn't just sit at chief exec level. Adrian, our commercial director, he talks with his counterparts regularly in terms of how they're enabling different products and services. Paul, our operations director, from a technical viewpoint, is connected with colleagues in Australia and America and Canada, etc., in order to consider those different technology developments, for example. So it's broader than just sitting at chief exec level and getting everybody engaged. What would be lovely in the future is having the events team travel more broadly and be able to see the events that are delivered elsewhere as well, because there's plenty to take from each other's. But I'm happy to say, because of the recognition we receive, that they also learn such a lot from our events. And the ACE 25 celebration went on across the world and was recognised as a real impactful event.
Yeah, I think the events team would be more than happy to travel the globe looking at other events, Jason.
Okay, want to note.
So thank you for today, Jason. I have one last favour to ask of you, if that's okay. So could you leave your question for our next guest on Behind the Button?
Well, I'd like you to ask the next guest, what's the most exciting element of their job today?
Good question.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for today, Jason. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you, Laura.
If you want to know more about CIPP membership, including fellowship, check out the show notes. And you know what to do? Hit subscribe or follow Behind the Button on your favourite podcast player. And if you're watching us on YouTube, tap the like button, drop us a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to get questions, suggestions, and payroll stories direct from you. Just email behindthebutton@cipp.org.uk. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.